if I haven't been saying it overall in this whole card, the UFC's done a fantastic job of putting together these striker versus striker battles. Maybe when it's not, a great striker versus a bad striker or anything like that, but just two guys that you can visualize or two ladies that you can visualize that when they do battle, it's going to be just this beautiful, maybe you're over analyzing it pre-fight and it turns into one thing when you watch it live, but it's just got so much value. And let's take a look at Sean Strickland and Krzysztof Jotko. I mean, for me, Sean Strickland, I feel like this is one of those few fighters where I'm going to be like one of those weird fanboys where if I ever meet him, he's going to be like, oh, you're such a loser. Like, just punch me in the face. I love you now. Because I've been watching this guy for like 8-9 years. We go back to the KOTC days with that long, flowy hair. I mean, we're one and the same, at least we used to be. And he was such a phenomenal kid to watch, right? Very raw. And I watched a really great interview with him, and he talks about how he was basically, on the verge of going to jail as a kid, and his coach picked him up and showed him the ropes. And by 15, he was basically a pro-level fighter, taking out guys who are much older than him, and just worked his way up as an overall fighter. And when you think about his record, I mean, I'm marveled by it because I used to see him a lot younger. He had a motorcycle accident, which kept him from the UFC for a little bit longer, which really prolonged his overall ascent, because when you think about it, 3 losses, right? Santiago Ponzinibbio, Kamaru Usman, and probably the most perfect spinning heel kick you'll ever see in your life. It's his only finish by KO, and Zaleski deserves all the credit in the world for landing that beautiful kick. But I mean, in those 3 losses, those are basically it. He had a hilarious press conference earlier, kind of shitting on Brendan Allen and just what he thinks of him as a fighter and how he finished him. And there's zero chance of him ever accepting a rematch against him unless it's down the line in some type of title picture of some weird, I guess, virtual reality, because he seems absolutely uninterested in that. He really wants the Kamaru Usman rematch, but he's guaranteeing he won't ever be making 170 again for the rest of his life. And so again, he looks like a phenomenal 185er. I think the Brendan Allen fight just proved how good his striking was. He's a talker in there. I like it. Just a hit kid who enjoys fighting. And that's what we kind of like from the fighters, right? At the end of the day, there's going to be money reasons. There's going to be passion reasons, but he has fun in there. And I think that's what makes him such a fun fighter to watch. I think watching his come up as a kid, dealing with such adversity with that motorcycle accident, all those little things just add up as you have more fun and follow a fighter, right? And I think that with his come up and all the adversity he's gone through and now, coming back from that motorcycle accident and looking like a true contender at middleweight, I don't think anything could go more perfect for him. And so you look at a guy like Jotko, who we haven't seen as often as you'd expect, taking on a 22-3 Strickland. He's coming in at 22-4. And, in watching the Eric Anders fight, which is his only fight in 2020, dating back to, July 2019, he hasn't been that active since his triple loss to David Branch, Brad Tavares, and Uriah Hall. The Uriah Hall and Brad Tavares losses are actually finishes. And, those are the things that really stood out to me, because as I'm watching the Eric Anders fight, like, we know how good of a strikers, Brad Tavares in terms of power and Uriah Hall in terms of technique and power, they can be, especially in that heyday that they had. But in this fight, Eric Anders, he's such a bulky guy, and he fights a very tough fight. But when you look at the way Jotko throws, I mean, he does get a bit tired after the first round. And the one thing that I think is going to work against him against Sean Strickland is he kind of throws broken punches and kicks. So it's a lot of ones here and a lot of ones there. They're not really put together. And as he gets tired, I find that happens more often to him. And, when you're going up against a guy like Sean Strickland, who's proving to have really good combos, especially with his hands, it's not something that I'm really interested in Jotko as a striker, because I think this is going to be a tough fight for him. But when you look at the way he fought against Eric Anders, I think it just needs to be a little bit more controlled, right? Maybe not go so crazy in the first round, especially a guy against a guy like Strickland, who actually has great cardio. I think that if that Brendan Allen fight went to the third round, you're just going to see a guy get really, really bloodied up. I think that's the way that fight would have gone. And right now you're looking at Strickland taking another fight against the guy who could potentially fade in the second and third round. So Strickland doesn't really need to worry about managing his cardio, maybe keeping his hands up, maybe avoiding some of these big knockouts from strikes that he might not see. But again, Jotko was throwing with a lot of like the one big body kicks, the one big leg kicks, things like that. And I think those are things that Strickland can deal with. I think that Jotko's going to have to put a lot of combinations together, attack first, not let Strickland basically unload some of these combos that helped him knock out Brendan Allen. I think that if this fight goes to the ground, he'll be a little bit more uncomfortable, but he's great on the ground too. When you look at some of the closer stats between these guys, for me, takedown defense of 81% on Strickland's side and 87% on Jotko's side. So for me, I know that I'm going to be looking at a striking battle. What kind of throws this fight off for me is when you look at just the overall, absorb per minute. I mean, these guys are really good defensive fighters, right? The 3.77 on Strickland's side, but he's got such a lengthy and damaging UFC career. But then the Jotko's 1.9. 1.9 with 58% defensive striking only lands about 2.98. So that's what I'm saying, right? When you look at the strikes landed per minute on Sean Strickland's side over 5, you kind of get an idea of what I'm getting at here too, right? He's going to throw a lot of volume. He's going to throw a lot of combos. Jotko is going to be trying to land these bigger shots, these much more powerful shots that might make the noise and maybe get you a rocked body that can help you maybe, get some top position and finish with a submission or ground and pound, things like that. But I think Strickland's a lot tougher than some of the other fighters that he might have taken on where that's worked. And this is a fight where he's really going to have to manage that cardio, but also push the pace in ways where he can see openings, get some combos off, and maybe avoid getting into these much deeper striking battles where I think Strickland's going to have the advantage. And so quickly, let's take a look at this line here. But wow, again, right? Sean Strickland, minus 275 opening, coming a bit down to minus 260, but, that's a definitive favorite. I'm sorry, I'm just going quickly through here. Probably second to Loma, right? Loma's the biggest favorite on the card. And I would say, it looks like Sean falls right in there as the second. I don't disagree with this line by any means. I think Jotko's got a lot to prove, and I think he's about to take on a volume striker who's quite accurate. And the thing is, if Jotko doesn't unload past that 2.98 mark against a guy like Strickland who's going to be putting combos together galore for a good 3 rounds if he has to, it's going to be a tough fight. And judging by these defensive takedown abilities, I don't think these guys are going to want to take it to the ground. So, very tough fight for Jotko. But I think if he's able to manage the energy in the first and try to work in his own striking in the later rounds, he might be able to pull off the upset decision here.